Hi folks, Scott Borthwick here. Many thanks to each and every one of you who checked out my Tumshie Heid video recently. This is the turnip lantern that I made for that particular video. As you can see, well, now you can see it in the light. You can actually see that it is just a turnip and not some dark creature looming at you from the gloom. Anyway, the reason that I made this was because I always enjoyed the turnip lantern when I was little. Growing up in Scotland, we didn't have pumpkins particularly. These are obviously a lot more difficult to carve, and in the old days you would lop off the top and then you would have to dig out the insides with a spoon or a knife or whatever you had and put I actually have a little plastic pretend candle in here for safety. But yes, they were very, very difficult to do. So in this particular instance, what I did was just quartered it, sliced off the pieces, and then stitched it together with string. So I'm very quickly going to do a slightly larger one just to run through this method for you, just in case you want to try it out. As far as I'm aware, no one else has ever done it this way. So this is the Borthwick patented Tumshie Heid method. It will take a little while, but I'm not going to show the entire thing. I will either skip through or speed up various parts so you get an idea of how we actually go about doing this. Simple things that we need. Tumshie. This is just a little old screwdriver with a slightly twisted top that I use to puncture the holes in the turnip flesh. We have a decent quality sharp knife, and then a smaller knife for carving the eyes and mouth. Right, I also found this little twist here, which I use almost like a needle to twist the string and push it through the holes, but you'll see that in a minute. Okay, so all that being said, let's get underway. Here's our turnip. I've decided that this is going to be the front of it. I thought I saw a face in there, so we're going to go for that. So first cut across the top of the head. I'm left-handed, by the way. Don't try and copy me exactly if you're not, because you may find it awkward. Okay. Okay, 4 quarters. Now you do want to try and keep some of this base so that you can keep your candle inside it. So what we're going to do is just take these parts, figure out which way each one goes, and just simply take one at a time. Actually, I'm going to take this one because it has a slightly flatter part of the base. So just make a cut. You want to keep it fairly thick as well, so that the lantern, when it's finished, still has a reasonable amount of heft to it. Okay, so we're just cutting down to the edge, and then this is the part that we decapitated from here. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the knife very carefully, just take a very small guide here. You don't want to cut too much towards your fingers. So just a little guide, and then place this safely out of the way. Cut away the material. Down close to that edge, and then just carve this last part out. That takes the first large chunk out of the way, and then you can just very carefully, keeping the fingers out of the way, just cut in here and just shape this out a little bit. Okay, I'll speed up a little bit now. just trying to keep fingers away from the cutting edge. Okay, there we have the first section. Now we're just going to repeat this 3 more times, so I won't subject you to the whole thing. We'll have a little music and we'll just speed up the video at this point. Knife work, so you do want to take a lot of care, because it would be relatively easy with a very tough thing like a turnip to have a little bit of slip here. So just work slowly, methodically, cutting away from yourself as much as possible or towards the board. But this is still a much quicker method than attempting to dig this out with a spoon or other knives just straight from the top. That was the old method, and yeah, it never really worked particularly well, and it was desperately difficult. You might ask why I'm keeping this in the pot. It's because I will be boiling this up and mashing it and having it with some tatties and haggis later. That's haggis, neeps and tatties, which is a nice quality Scottish. Well, you may not say quality, you might consider it to be actually very unhealthy, which it probably is. But as an occasional thing, particularly when the weather starts getting a little bit colder, not a terrible thing to have available. Now the haggis really is in effect a form of sausage, but it does use some parts of the sheep that a lot of people don't like the heart and the lungs and the liver, known as the pluck. There are vegetarian versions available now, because the sausage has a lot of oatmeal in it. Actually works very well as a vegetarian. It's oatmeal and spices basically, so it works very well as a vegetarian option. So if you want to try haggis but are a little bit squeamish about eating the heart of a sheep, then by all means try a vegetarian version. I actually tend to do a little bit of both. So we'll have the old-fashioned traditional version and some vegetarian. Usually have a little bit of each, just for a bit of variety. Now this turnip's a lot bigger than the one that I did yesterday, so it's taking a little bit more. Just trying to score into here to take the material out a little faster. What's it say? With safety in mind. But certainly when we were children, we used to make these turnips, dig them out from above, and yeah, it's relatively easy to injure yourself. It was always entertaining watching your parents attempting to do it, because you usually learned a few words that you didn't know before then. Always worth knowing about. And I don't know if anyone's ever come up with this method before. I just thought about it the other day, and I thought, you know what, this might work out rather well. And because we're trying to create something hideous, that's the end result. As you can see, stitched together very much like a yes, something that's been dug up out of a grave and put back together by a mad scientist. Maybe that's the look that we're going for here. And of course, Halloween itself has its origins in the Celtic world. The Scots, the Irish, the Welsh, I dare say the Cornish, and a few others will probably lay claim to the actual origins, but it is obviously a pre-Christian festival. Okay, I think that's all the material that I want to remove, and I'm sure that a few of you that may be amateur or even professional chefs or have cooking training are probably watching this between your fingers. But yes, despite that slight slip at the end there, yes, no cuts, we're absolutely fine. Okay, so we're done with the knives for now, and you can breathe a sigh of relief that I've managed not to spill any blood. Right, now let's double check just to make sure that we have the pieces that we want in the shape that we want. Just a little bit of piecing back together, that one goes there. So that one must go there, there. Okay, so this is the way that I want these pieces to go. We'll just spread them back out as they were. Now, the next part, yes, if you thought the knife was a little bit dangerous and I was being a little bit casual with it, puncturing the holes could be even more so. Now, what I learned from yesterday was because of the way you're cutting with the knife, you do get a little bit less material at the edges, so you're as well coming in a little bit further in to make sure that your string doesn't break when it gets pulled tight. There's one or two of these went a little bit loose as it was getting pulled tight. Now you may think that this is a pretty crazy method for something that's only going to last a couple of days, but it's all meant to be fun, and I wanted the turnip anyway. So just put this as much as possible flat down on the surface. Take this. This is just a flat screwdriver, but it's been slightly twisted up. It's just an old one that was lying about the house. So we'll just take this in and just twist in and just make little puncture holes. It actually punctures fairly easily. A Tumshie is a fairly tough thing, but yeah, against some metal it's going to puncture easy. I did, I think, 6 on either side and the other one, so we'll try that this time. 5 and 6. Okay, same on the other side. Okay, now you have punctures in all of them. We'll just get a regular ball of string, yourself a reasonable amount, and I have misplaced my scissors. In 1 second. Scissors now. I found that in order to push this through here, obviously if you have some kind of needle that can take something as big as this piece of string, then that's not going to be a problem. But if you take this little twist here and just capture a reasonable amount on the end, 1 inch or 2, and just give it a very tight twist around. You'll find that that should be able to pull through the guide hole pretty well. It will pull it open just a little bit, but that's no bad thing. Right, okay, so the trick here is to pick two pieces that you're going to start stitching together. And my recommendation is to start at the first one. You start at the top, you're going to work your way down to the bottom and then back up. Is that right? No, we'll start at the bottom, work our way around to the top and back up, and then if we've got enough we can just stretch across and do the next one in a straight run. So just finding this first little guide hole, and it should just poke straight through. Right. Okay, once you got it through, don't forget, tie a little knot at the end here. This is fairly thick string, so knot like that is going to hold it very easily. Now this is another good reason to use a little battery operated tea light, because obviously you've got string inside here. The environment is fairly damp, but it will singe quite badly if you put a naked flame in there. Also, if you do put a naked flame in, you're going to have to put a little chimney in the lid. Just worth bearing in mind. Now we actually used to carry these around. We'd get this string and we would carry it around with a little as a little handle, but obviously the handle had to be very long because we didn't have these when we were little. Well, if we did, my parents would buy them. So we used real candles, and so the string had to be exceptionally long so you didn't burn your fingers on the string. So a little insight into what we went through for Halloween. Okay, so we're going to work our way across, stitching this kind of like a football, just with a straight stitch. So we'll go across first, draw it through. Right, and then down the way on the same side. Find a way through. Where's that hole now? There we are. Now you may consider this very fiddly and not worth your while, and that's absolutely up to you. This is just what I did. It was a little bit of fun. Kids seem to enjoy it. We're just going to pull that tight a little bit. You can absolutely pull this tighter once you get to the next part. And yes, the first one and the last one are particularly fiddly because the first one is just kind of flopping about like this. There's under no kind of control. And the last one, not quite to grasp that. There it comes. Yes, the last one gets a bit fiddly because you're trying to work inside the thing, but we will get there. It does take a little while. This is the bit that actually takes the longest. But given that we didn't injure ourselves at all in the making of this, I see this as a step forward, even if it does ultimately take a little longer. I think the final outcome is actually very good. Interestingly enough, this turnip is a wee bit fresher than the one that I used in the last one, so the flesh has got a little bit more water in it, and it's a little bit more difficult to grasp. My needle. We're on this side again. Okay, usually my iPhone ran out of storage at that exact moment, so we have switched phones. Apologies if the picture is suddenly so much better, or the sound quality is suddenly so much better. I was using an old iPhone 6 and I just switched to my wife's rather newer one. But we're just going to speed this up and fast forward anyway, so you don't need to sit through this entire process. I also noticed this is a bit damp, so I grabbed a pair of pliers so that I can pull this through a little bit quicker as well. Just speeds up the process a little bit. Okay, now one side is done. What I'm just going to do is pull this a little tighter, just following the thread through, pulling on this side, pulling on this side, just tightening up. Now obviously it doesn't need to be perfect. I think maybe if you were going to carry this around to scare your neighbours or give to your children to play, if that's what you really want to do, you would potentially want to make that a bit tighter, maybe even continue sewing up this bottom part, but I didn't bother because, to be honest, it's just going to be a little ornament, and it's meant as a little bit of fun, so I wasn't going to over-engineer it, and it's maybe already over-engineered as it is. You could argue that point. So as I'm not using a naked flame inside, I'm quite happy just continuing with drawing the string straight across to the other part and just starting again across to the next section of the turnip, just moving on straight away. And that doesn't really get in the way of anything, so that's absolutely fine. Okay. Next section, just making sure we have the pieces together that we want in the place that we want them to be. That was that one, and this is the one that we're looking for. Okay, these do close up a little bit, these holes, these gate holes, so you might want to keep your screwdriver nearby so you can just widen that gap a little bit, make your life a touch easier. I say make your life a touch easier. You could of course just watch this on even more fast forward than I'm doing it and then just not bother. That's entirely up to you. But I thought it was a little fun, I thought it looked pretty good, so for those of you who asked how this is done, now you know. And if you want to do something a little bit different for Halloween, it doesn't take too long. I think it creates kind of a fun effect. As you see, it gets a little bit wobbly at this point when you're dealing with several pieces all at once. So maybe a good idea, a good reason not to use a needle to pull this through, because you probably would end up stabbing yourself with it. Or I would, you might not, you might be very careful. Figure as a musician I should be looking after my hands, fingers better, but I don't. Strange little DIY projects. These kind of things, they do take a toll sometimes. Halfway stage, I guess. What we're going to do is just pull this tight again, just give it another little tighten. Right from the start, all the way through again. Okay, it's fairly tight on that side, and very loose on this side still. as I would say with a lot of these kind of things, it doesn't need to be perfect. You're not looking to do too much with this other than display it. Once it is vegetable matter, so once it's undermined to this extent, it's going to start falling apart. In any event, okay, there was a fair amount of play in that. Right, now we're just what we're going to do at the end here. Just tie a knot in this and try and get the knot as close to the edge as possible. So it doesn't need to be all that tight because you're going to have four sides off here in any event. Clip off the excess, and then we're going to repeat the other two sides. Untwist your little packet. I don't know what these are called. They're just little pieces of wire with the plastic around them. Use them for sealing bags, bag sealers maybe. Twist the grips. I don't know. I would say answers in the comments, but I don't imagine that anybody's particularly concerned one way or another. You know the kind of thing I'm talking about. And who knows, maybe you've got a big upholstery needle or something like that, you would have done this in 20 minutes. Maybe you're sitting there saying, what a ridiculous idea, why would you actually waste your time doing that? But I would say, well, why don't you carve a pumpkin? To me, this is preferable for the simple reason that I prefer the taste of turnip once I've cooked it. You can eat it raw, whereas with pumpkin I'm not so sure. Now let's just double check what we're trying to do here. What I want to do here is finish at the top again, because the last thing I want is to be trying to do the last couple of pieces right inside this when it's going right to the bottom. So once again, we started at the top, working our way across, and we finished at the top, which is why it's a good idea to have the same number of holes and an even number of holes on either side, so that you're going to work your way down and then work your way back up again. So once again, first piece through, that came easy. And don't forget, tie a knot on the end. And here we go, back to the final part. To see that this is coming together, holding more or less in shape. Once again, we are a little bit loose, so we're just going to tighten the stitching up. And once again, we'll just draw this across. To the next row of stitching, and this is us finally pulling the entire piece together. Just get it to fit as well as you can. Now this bottom has actually gone up a little bit high. I want to undo what I've just done here. It's actually because we're just trying to make sure we can find the guide holes. Here we can obviously tell we're reaching the end because the tools are beginning to break down. And little needle is just about had it, but I think we're going to be able to complete this. Need to make these guide holes a little bit more solid because a little bit extended because the needle is not quite making it now. Loosen off the guide holes a little bit. Allow us just to speed things up for this last stint. You may also notice our thread is a little shorter than we expected here as well, but we're almost there. And I think, yes indeed, our thread is actually done, so what we're going to do is just very quickly splice two pieces of thread together. Little lack of planning there. Thought I had the exact right amount, but we're just a little short on our string. This is obviously going to be interesting trying to get this through the final guide holes, but we will get there. Just loosen off our needle again. Just have to make this guide hole fairly large. If or not, it's going to have to come through here. This could be tricky. I don't think it's quite going to make it, is it? I believe this knot is going to be way too big. I'm afraid the guide hole is going to have to be rather large to accommodate that. But it maybe just adds to the horror of the lantern. It kind of does, because it's only a little tuft of hair to the whole thing. It's reasonably horrific. Okay, last two. And one thing about leaving the string a little short, obviously, is tying it off becomes that more difficult. I know it may surprise a lot of you to discover, but I'm actually not either a mad scientist or in fact a surgeon. The last one is right here. And this barely fits. But what we can do is once we're at this stage, we'll just see about giving this one final tighten. It's not too bad. I believe because we have run out of rope, instead of tying it off, I'm just going to fold up my little sandwich bag wrap fastener tightener. And there we have it. You actually see that it is fairly solid. It is going to hold it together reasonably well. We'll just see if we can match up the lid to where it ought to be. I think it's around about here. So there we go. Now, I had expected this was going to be the front of it, and I think this is where I'm going to stay with my ideas. The idea here was to create, yes, an open mouth here. This is exactly what that is. I'm going to have to cut slightly inside that, and then a couple of eyes. This always looked like an eye right here, so we're just going to reopen this. This gets a bit more tricky because obviously this squashes down a little bit. We're going to have to be very careful with our knife. You switch to the smaller knife. And very gently, so keeping your fingers nicely out of the way. We're just going to cut within the guidelines that have been left us by the base of the Tumshie being cut off. So I'm just going to score that around there. Okay, remembering to cut away from yourself when you can. And keep your fingers out of the way. And just very gently making that cut steadily deeper. It's going to move around a fair bit, so if you're going to try and steady yourself, just keep those fingers out of the way. There we go. We're now cutting all the way through on that side. Try and do the same on this side here. Just working very nice and slowly, slightly twisting the knife as you go around those curves. Obviously a lot easier to create straight cuts. As you can see here, this is just the knife plunging straight in and cutting around, but here I'm trying to create a slightly rounder cut, so just little cuts and moving the knife around the shape that you're looking for. And there we go, we're going to come through fairly soon. Okay, first part of the gawping mouth. This part is already cut through, and so I'm just going to hold carefully onto this, keeping my fingers out of the way of the knife. And again, same thing, just gently, little cuts, stabbing motion around this arc. Now obviously you don't need to do it around an arc, this just happened to be the shape that I saw, much like the sculptor finding his sculpture in the stone. I was inspired by what to me looked like a rather shocked mouth. We'll see how this turns out. Now you never know, like a lot of things, you never know exactly how these things are going to turn out. I'm sure there are expert carvers out there who will produce absolute masterpieces. This is not something I spend a lot of my time doing, so I don't know. We'll see how that goes. Now let's see. We wanted one eye to be around here, where this horrible little pieces here. I see one eye here. I think we're going to put an odd eye up here. Yes, sadly deformed Tumshie Heid. So we'll take this again, a very similar idea, because this is a very particular shape. I'm just going to take this knife and make very little incisions around the edge of this shape. Just gently making sure you're not squashing the overall head, because of course it is hollow now. Now I suppose you could argue that you could do some of this carving beforehand, but you never really know how deep you need to go. So it may be marginally easier to do it this way. You could of course do some of the early carving before you started the process if you wish. I think this is going to work. Knife may actually be a little bit too big for this particular hole I'm trying to carve, so almost there. To make it marginally larger so that we can get through here. Seems to be most of the way around. Not quite there. Don't know if this is extra. It's all the way through for sure. Take a little material off the inside and see if we can pull this out now. And this is like the old days, carving into the turnip. Let's see if we can get it. Certainly all the way through. Fairly small eye really, but maybe make the other one a little larger. Let's make him more. Let's make this one more triangular, just to make our lives a little bit easier. Okay, kite shape really. It's going to be a touch simpler. Okay, here we go. Take out any excess and let's stick a little lamp inside this one. Lid on the top. And how are we looking? Well, we can see the candle a little bit too much perhaps. We just need to put that a little bit towards the back. Another advantage of the torch candle is we can put it any direction we please. And there we go. Keep on knocking that lid off. I think we're trying to set it upright a little bit too much. Okay, there we go. We'll switch the lights off and you can have a closer look at it in semi-darkness. Okay, with stitching all the way around, yes, without it being completely dark, it's a little bit difficult to get the full effect of it, but you get the idea. And there we go. The silliness of the Tumshie Heid lantern. Happy Halloween for everybody. Thank you very much for watching.